Hello! Welcome to Pondering the Orb. I'm your host, the wandering fantasy author, Requard. As you can tell, I'm shooting this in a very special location. So please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let's look at some old books and new books. I call this section Old Book because it examines books that are older than 5 years, which is a small number, for once again we're reaching back to Robert E. Howard. No author has greater influence than Two Gun Bobs on the sword and sorcery genre, and while popular for his most famous character, Conan the Barbarian, he actually launched several successful characters with lasting impact. Enter Solomon Kane, a Puritan, a swordsman, a soldier, priest, and perhaps more pagan than he'd dare consider. This character set so many standards for dark fantasy heroes. This is only an opinion, but some of these stories are better than the Conan tales. They are so smoothly delivered, it is astounding. These are high actions set against frightful monsters and magic, set in places like Europe and Africa, but these tales are still so fresh for today. I could go on, but let's carry on with Robert E. Howard and his timeless character, Solomon Kane. Skulls in the Stars by Robert E. Howard. He told how murderers walk the earth beneath the curse of Cain, with crimson clouds before their eyes and flames about their brain, for blood has left upon their souls its everlasting stain. Hood. Chapter 1. There are two roads to Torquay Town. One, the shorter and more direct route, leads across a barren upland moor, and the other, which is much longer, winds its tortuous way in and out among the hummocks and quagmires of the swamps, skirting the low hills to the east. It was a dangerous and tedious trail, so Solomon Kane halted in amazement when a breathless youth from the village he had just left overtook him, and implored him for God's sake to take the swamp road. The swamp road! Kane stared at the boy. He was a tall, gaunt man, was Solomon Kane. His darkly pallid face and deeply brooding eyes made more somber by the drab, puritanical garb he affected. "Yes, sir, 'tis far safer," the youngster answered in his surprised exclamation. "Then the moor road must be haunted by Satan himself, for your townsman warned me against traversing the other." "Because of the quagmire, sir, that you might not see in the dark. You had better return to the village and continue your journey in the morning, sir." "Taking the swamp road?" "Yes, sir." Kane shrugged his shoulders and shook his head. "The moon rises as soon as the twilight dies. By its light I can reach Torquay Town in a few hours, across the moor." "Sir, you had better not. No one ever goes that way. There are no houses at all upon the moor, while in the swamp there is the house of old Ezra, who lives all alone since his manic cousin, Gideon, wandered off and died in the swamp and was never found. And old Ezra, though a miser, would not refuse you lodging should you decide to stop until morning. Since you must go, you had better go the swamp road." Kane eyed the boy piercingly. The lad squirmed and shuffled his feet. "Since this moor road is so dour to wayfarers," said the Puritan, "why did not the villagers tell me the whole tale, instead of vague mouthings?" "Men like not to talk of it, sir. We hoped you would take the swamp road after the men advised you to, but when we watched and saw you turn not at the forks, they sent me to run after you and beg you to reconsider." "Name of the devil!" exclaimed Kane sharply, the unaccustomed oaths showing his irritation. "The swamp road and the moor road. Which is it that threatens me, and why should I go miles out of my way, and risk bogs and mires?" "Sir," said the boy, dropping his voice and drawing closer, "we be simple villagers who not like to talk of such things, lest foul fortune befall us. But the moor road is a way accursed, and had not been traversed by any of the countryside for a year or more. It is death to walk those moors by night, as hath been found by a score of unfortunates. Some foul horror haunts the way, and claims men for his victims." "So? And what is this thing like?" "No man knows. None has ever seen it and lived, but the late farers have heard terrible laughter far out on the fen, and men have heard the horrid shrieks of its victims. Sir, in God's name return to the village. There pass the night, and tomorrow take the swamp trail to Torquay Town." Far back in Kane's gloomy eyes a scintillant light had begun to glimmer, like a witch's torch glinting under the fathoms of cold, gray ice. His blood quickened. Adventure! The lure of life risk and battle. The thrill of breathtaking, touch-and-go drama. Not that Kane recognized his sensations as such. He sincerely considered that he voiced his real feelings when he said, "These things be deeds of some power of evil. The lords of darkness have laid a curse upon the country. A strong man is needed to combat Satan and his might. Therefore I go, who have defied him many times." "Sir," the boy began, then closed his mouth when he saw the futility of argument. He only added, "The corpses of the victims are bruised and torn, sir." He stood there at the crossroads, sighing regretfully as he watched the tall, rangy figure swinging up the road that led toward the moors.
I'm in my favorite place to be, and since I'm here, let's have some fun. I'm going to read from my story, Whiplash at the Steam Crags, which was lucky enough to be part of the first issue of MIRK Fantasy Magazine out of Scotland. This short sword and sorcery tale follows the ranger Bjorn Whiplash Pedersen as he sets up to the western border of Homeland and Dageria, which exists in Dovhane, a world where many of my stories take place. But more important than that, I'm here to talk about MIRK. For fiction, and any kind of fiction to flourish, it requires people creating venues for authors like myself and others in the form of publishers, imprints, magazines, e-zines, audiobooks, podcasts, and more. MIRK is taking a chance on me and other great authors, and if you want to see more great authors bringing you great stories, take a chance on a magazine like MIRK. Let's read from Whiplash at the Steam Crags, which you can read in the first issue of MIRK Fantasy Magazine.
Whiplash at the Steam Crags by J. Requard, featured in the first issue of MIRK Fantasy Magazine. It sounded again, high and mournful, across the valley steppes. A cat's high screech carried over the scrub and hardy trees, above chilled peaks where shaggy goats dared the sheer sides of cliffs, most at a steep plunge into hard oblivion. Reverberating, the cry could have originated from anywhere along the length of Bluston Valley. The blustery wind deadened its echo. Bior leaned on his horse, Montolio, to gain some measure of the far-off noise. More than familiar with the various beasts and monsters inhabiting the gloomy forests and barren plains of Homeland, he surrendered whatever it was to the cruel vagaries of nature. He diverted his attention to the valley's verdant basin, almost pristine if not for the gray ascent to the northwest, where mineral mines fell off the other side into foreign lands not recognizing his ranger seal. He steered his wheat and coal-patched steed down a worn track according to the map sandwiched to his thigh with a fist, which had been called an official road, though by the poor condition of its muddy edges he worried what he'd find once he tracked into civilization. It grew worse past the first farmsteads, where tilled fields of dry dirt lay fallow for the autumn season. He spotted a few locals, all men who offered a little more than a scowl. Bjorn kept a tight grip on Montolio's reins in his left hand, his right hand drifting up to the knotted thong of his bear whip as they ambled into town. A sparse center with no more than 6 timber buildings, though substantial in their size and thatching. Dozens of earth homes and lodges crowded where the few hundred of the town's population roosted, not counting the miners in the hills. The 3 intersecting paths that served as streets met in front of a large rectangular cabin with a placard reading City Hall. He dismounted and led Montolio to the nearest hitching post, near the bottom of the porch's steps to the wide green door. Paying no attention to its weathered coating or the bare spot where the large brass clapper had fallen off, he instead focused on the 3 men in front of it. One of them, dressed in the skins of a seasoned woodsman, stepped forward with hands gripping the lapels of his goat-hide mantle. "Ho there, traveler," he said, a sinister grin cracking his sun-aged face. A short sword and a knife stuck from the wide girdle around his stout waist, showing no harm, though his 2 fellows in the back made no effort to hide their hands on their hatchets. The edges on both wedges glinted in the sinking sunlight. They blocked the entrance. Armed with an unstrung bow and a camp axe bound to his quiver of goose-fletched arrows to supplement his main weapon, Bjorn stood guard beside Montolio. "What are you doing around these parts?" the lead man asked an accented Scadean, the tongue of the Homelanders. Bjorn opened his woolen green mantle to reveal a pocket sewn into the brown vest layered over another woolen shirt. He extracted a small medallion, an emblem of a broad-winged eagle clutching an arrow in one claw, a dead fox in the other. The symbol of the High King of Helmland's territorial rangers. He displayed it to the ruffians. "This is the town of Bluston, isn't it?" he asked in fluent Dager, the tongue of the horseman over the border. The lead man snarled a mean noise at the back of his throat and spat a glob to the side. "You must be that hunter the mayor sent for," he continued in his native tongue, no more impressed. "Ranger," Bjorn replied. "Ranger," Bjorn replied. "Are you three the town guard?" One of the hatchetmen chortled. "You could say," the lead man answered. "We're the current help while the mayor pays us what we're asking. Just keeping the peace in this sleepy little town while good men go work the mines for all that iron and those pretty, pretty rocks." Bjorn grunted in understanding, his pale blue eyes fixed on the lead man. "You all have the look of horsemen," he sniffed, taking in their smell of manure and wood smoke. "Not clean ones." "It's dirty work," said the lead man, his expression darkening. "What's your name, Ranger?" Bjorn checked the brutes flanking the rough. "Bjorn Vidarsson. It has been reported this town has a—" "Wait a second!" The man on the left raised a swarthy finger at Bjorn. "I've heard of you! You're that monster killer. What do they call you? What do they call you? Whiplash! That's it! They call this one Whiplash!" The third man laughed as the lead man reappraised Bjorn again, more seriously than before. "Others call me that." Bjorn did not wither under their dangerous gazes. "And you are?" "I am called Tafik," said the lead man, tilting his head to the side as he matched the ranger's ready stance. "This is Umar on my right, and his cousin Jadir on my left. And like you said, we were horsemen, until we lost our—" "Ain't nobody's business," Umar, Tafik said with a glare at his compatriot. "But it's true, we lost our horses a few months back. Terrible accident with the last horse clan we affiliated with." "I'm sure," Bjorn said. "Is the mayor inside?" "That he is," said Tafik, squaring his shoulders, pleased by the few inches in height he had on Bjorn. "Come aside, men. Let the ranger get on his way." Bjorn broke ahead, paying no mind to their amused sneers. "You know," said Jadir, "he really does have a pretty horse." Bjorn stopped right in front of the door, the iron-wrought handle there for the taking, if not for the raised hairs on the back of his neck. 3 sets of footfalls pounded the 2 steps and beat the earth near Montolio. The steed snorted his displeasure through wide and heavy nostrils. "Aye, Jetty, a real pretty thing," said Umar. "You know, this is the exact kind of horse we've been looking for." "You know it is," replied Jedar. "I'd be sweet to him," Tafik said, more measured than the brothers. "Being so fine, after all." "And look at this coat," Umar said. The rough smack of a palm on Montolio's dappered shoulder set Bjorn in the movement. In a twisting turn, he loosed the whip from its coil around his body and lashed out. The length sped, wrapping around the outstretched arm of Umar. Wrist and arm tight, the ranger snapped his entire body in the opposite direction, spinning in a complete circle as he yanked the ruffian off his feet. Smarter than the rest, Tafik kept his distance from Montolio, facing Bjorn the entire time. His cocksure smile never flagged as he watched Umar struggle against the bear whip around his arm, its stinging grip leaving him in tears. His cousin Jadir rushed over, kneeling in the dirt, too shocked to be of any assistance. "Walk away from my horse." Bjorn flicked his wrist, and the whip uncoiled from Umar's hide-cover arm. "Now." Jadir dragged his kid away from Montolio and City Hall. "Give him room, boy," said Tafik, hooking his thumbs in his war girdle. "It is a pretty horse, after all." Bjorn watched, cold and coiled, until the 3 men collected themselves and staggered around the next corner of the building. He let their footfalls, loud and clumsy, fade into the distance before he entered the lonesome timber building, far less enthused about civilization than before.
From the wonderful city of Toronto, Nightflyer is a synthwave composer already well known to the scene with 2 great EPs and a dizzying array of singles that are delights to dig into. This track, Vaporwave, comes from the 2023 EP Illusions out of Girlfriend Records, one of the most dynamic labels out there. Without question, when it comes to a master of the form, few have the consistency of quality to match Nightflyer. These are great songs. Let's shine with Vaporwave by Nightflyer. We're going back to the well with Words of Farewell, one of the most energetic and creative melodic death metal bands out of Germany. Already with a lineup of albums every fan of Melodeath should be digging into, we're pulling some deep cuts. Seriously, if you haven't watched these guys play through their songs live on YouTube or had the blessing of catching them at a European festival, I cannot stress what you're missing out on. Again, we're going for a deep cut. This track, In Kingdoms of Rain, is taken from 2014's Black Wild Yonder, an incredibly underrated slab of aggression and melody par excellence. Let's grind with Words of Farewell. And that's our show. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Pondering the Orb. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Hey, I have a new book coming out. The first novella in my Sword and Sorcery spy series, Spy Counter Killer, called A Dangerous Brew, will be coming out on September 22nd. I'll be back when pre-orders are live. Until then, please, safe journeys.